environmental factors, such as light, temperature, and food, or in the real world, for example, in factories where we measure different variables over the course of the day, or in the world at large by simply asking normal people when they do what. My initial reason for studying the body clock was autobiographical and almost by chance. One of the pioneers of the field, Jürgen Aschoff, was the director of a research institute in the Bavarian countryside. Jürgen and his wife, Hilda, had 6 children who attended the same school that I did. I became friends with all of them despite age differences. The Aschoff family lived in a beautiful castle, the Schloss, on the slope of a hill in Andechs, a village near the Ammersee, one of the larger Bavarian lakes. Andechs was a long way out in the countryside with almost no commuting possibilities. The Aschoff parents, therefore, allowed their children to invite friends to stay whenever they wanted, even overnight. To be part of a large crowd of youngsters who were all extremely interesting and interested was a lot of fun, and I stayed at the Schloss as often as I could. I also got on extremely well with the professor himself and became more and more interested in the science that he and his colleagues pursued. When I was about 17, I began to work as a part-time assistant at Aschoff's Institute during most of my school holidays. It allowed me to combine the fun of learning science, spending time with fascinating people, and earning some money, a dream situation. There were always many visitors, friends of the parents, friends of the children, but also lots of scientists, some of them internationally famous, who seemed to be engaged in endless scientific discussions. I had always loved science, but the atmosphere in Andechs gradually turned me into a junkie. This was exactly the life I wanted to lead. Although I probably had assimilated more knowledge about body clocks by the time I entered university than most students do by the time they graduate, I started to study physics, in my view the most fundamental science of all. But I soon realized that the true aim of my interests concerned humans, and that physics just didn't get me any closer to understanding them. So I switched to medicine. But once again, I felt that this discipline would not be the right vehicle for my curiosity. Although I wanted to know everything about humans, the focus of my interests wasn't on helping or curing them. I began to appreciate that I could only start to learn something about humans if I understood more about evolution, genetics, biochemistry, comparative physiology, and ecology, but none of these subjects was taught in any depth in medical school. I finally ended up studying biology. I enjoyed discussions with other students and scientists much more than attending lectures, and I read lots of papers and books that covered many more issues than those taught in a degree program. I felt that my learning only began when I started working in the lab, collecting experimental data and then trying to make sense of them. The attempts at making sense of data always were my utmost joy in science, and still are. I think that this joy and the ways and methods I use to approach the mysterious world of data go back to my intensive interactions with Jürgen Aschoff when I was at a very impressionable age. After a detour into photobiology, neurophysiology, and brain research that lasted for many years, I finally returned to the field that investigates biological clocks, chronobiology, as a postdoctoral fellow. I spent my first postdoc time back in Andechs, working with Jürgen Aschoff, not as a student but as a somewhat fledged scientist. I remained a colleague and friend of the Old One, as his family and close friends called him, although he never ceased to be my mentor, until he died in October 1998. After 2 years studying annual rhythms in humans with Aschoff, I was eager to learn more about how biological clocks work in cells, how they generate an internal day with the help of molecules. So I decided to work with another pioneer of chronobiology, Woody Hastings, a Harvard professor. I was part of his team in Cambridge, Massachusetts for almost 4 years and kept going back during the summer for many more years. Returning to Germany, I found a rocky academic landscape for someone who simultaneously studied humans and single-cell algae, someone who was more interested in the investigation of concepts, such as the biological clock, than in staying within the boundaries of the little boxes created by our disciplines and faculties. Where did I belong according to orderly German academic criteria? Botany, zoology, ecology, anthropology, or medicine? I ended up in the medical faculty, specifically in the Department of Medical Psychology. Ernst Pöppel